how accurate are the
Yeah.
predictions? Because we hear a lot about the numbers, and obviously, Mark has shown us in the fundamental piece about, well, we can use this to drive some expectations and these numbers when we compare the scenarios, for example. And you mentioned stress testing as well. But how have you ever been challenged on the accuracy of those numbers, and how do you stand behind them? And then how do you update, make sure that you keep those predictions as accurate as possible?
Yeah, yeah. No, of course, with for example, now in Russia, we made in a simulation, it shows us that we will achieve like 35% a better profit. And if we would come up with 8%, so they would say, okay, we believe it. If you come with 35%, so of course everyone is asking. So let's be honest in that. And actually, yes, the people were looking on that. The problem is with the first strategy that nobody really fully understand what the software is doing and how the software derived to that, because the internal structure is relatively complex. You have only 1-2 persons really understanding the complexity. So then from this simulation, it was like, okay, so let's see whether it will be confirmed. But then the second phase comes. So you place it to the challenger. So in our case, we had like 35, we finally delivered like 70, but the fair to say is that there were some tests on a low pricing. So I guess we would deliver like around 40%. And with the Česka, we had the same. With the first project, we predicted like 20% profit uplift. We delivered like 26. So it's always like relatively accurate. I'm in a projects always trying to decrease the expectation. So I'm always saying we will deliver 10% because I give it to my KPIs and I'm sure that I always deliver it. So then everyone's surprised with the 35. They don't believe that it will be 35. I tell them at least 20, and then it's 35 or even more. So, but I think that the important thing is always to go to the test afterwards to really prove the numbers as a challenger on some 10% randomly selected portfolio to make the right MIS, right, like analytic. We made everything, in Tableau. So we have all kind of, single differences between the champion challenger. And then we can show on a real numbers where are the differences, how the pricing limits behaves, where we gain the biggest benefit, etc. So then the people really understand the results and understand how the optimizer come up with such an improvement.
Thank you. Mark, you were going to add something, I think.
Yeah, I think it's important to note what you're measuring against. What we quite frequently see is during the project, and that's what Peter was saying as well, there's a lot of insight on what is working in my current strategy, what is not working in my current strategy. Are there pockets in the portfolio where I'm not even making any profit, and so forth. So what we frequently see is when we're starting and saying, well, you will have an uplift of 35% on your compared to BAU, and the project is taking 5 to 7 months, that during that time, strategies already get changed. So a lot of the insights that are coming from decision modeling and optimization are already built into the strategies. So that's why I'm saying it really depends on what you're measuring against. If you're taking a lot of the insights in changing your strategies as you're going along, then obviously there's a different uplift than if you compare it to business as usual when you started.
A question around the difficult times that we're going through at the moment. Obviously, COVID-19 has thrown a huge challenge to every lending organization and has changed and had an enormous impact on the entire world. how valid, one of the questions that was leveled at me the other day was, how valid is this type of technology, and how useful is it in these uncertain times? Because the challenge was, well, none of us know what's going to happen. And Peter, Mark, Verity, I don't know whether you've got perspective on that, but I'd love to maybe close with some thoughts on sort of how do we address this challenge that we're all facing at the moment.
Yeah, maybe one, because in Russia there was a significant lockdown, so we went through this crisis. I went through the crisis also in the Czech Republic. So to be honest, it's the optimization is always as accurate as a model. So if nothing works, then of course the optimization is data driven. But usually it is not happening. This is not happening. Usually, even if you have your scorecards during the crisis, it may be lose a little bit of the performance, but you still deciding based on the application scorecard. Means that your good clients is remaining good and weaker clients remaining weaker. Only the level may be increased, so you predict in a best rating, you predict 0.5 instead of 0.3, and in your weakest you predict like 10% instead of like 6%. So this is usually what is happening in this crisis, and it is really the even better to have the optimization in this case, because the models usually works, just the level is increasing. Yeah, and for this level you can manage it, and you can help. You get a big help by the optimizer, because you incorporate these stress scenarios to your optimization strategies, and it gives you the perfect navigation what you should do. Yeah, we had a discussion how to move the cutoff and what will be profitable and what not, and then the big calculation started. Yeah. And I said, okay, let's simulate these like scenarios which I mentioned during my presentation, and we took some scenario that the overall level will increase of 30%, and the optimizer said, okay, the rating, I don't know, 6 and 5 is already unprofitable. It was proven by this stress test, and we said, okay, we will cut these two ratings because by the simulation it's unprofitable. And we had it relatively straightforward. We calculated what will be the new profitability, what we had before, and what we will have with this 30% risk increase on the market. So we could do much more accurate decision than having the many discussions whether we should cut one risk grade or two risk grades, whether this risk grade will be profitable or not, and having the different explanation, or whether we should change the limit and how to change the limit. So the optimizer in fact solved for us this problem. If we would be even more like accurate, I could even give the optimizer I could incorporate this increase to the strategy. I could create the strategy which already includes like a 30% risk increase, and it would create me the new strategy for the crisis. Or you can simulate it and said, okay, I will cut these two things because it's already unprofitable with this as a strategy. So I think that it's even much more better, because it gives you the correct navigation.
I think that the key here is it helps you avoiding the risk of overshooting in both directions.
Yes, exactly.
We're seeing organizations as a measure, as a first measure, they're taking down production to as low as 20%. And that is just defensive, but with no view of whether that is right and what it's doing to the portfolio. And I think we have the same observations if you simply look on risk-based pricing. If you do risk-based pricing and you have to achieve a certain level of customers, receiving the advertised price, then if you don't have the means of exactly measuring and steering, you're overshooting and you're leaving money on the table.
Yes, I fully agree, Mark, because usually when such a crisis comes, then the risk managers comes and they said, okay, we have to cut as much as possible because the crisis comes, and creating the problem sometimes even bigger than it is. If you make your simulation and you see the impact, it gives you some correct picture of what will happen in what situation, and you have much more evidence, and you don't have to be afraid that something that I will totally lose my portfolio, etc.
Yeah.
You have the correct information, and you can do the precise decision without a panic and overcutting or just waiting and hope that it will be okay. It will be not okay. You cannot say nothing is happening, it will somehow recover, so I will do nothing. It's not a correct position, but also correct position is not like I will stop my lending because the portfolio will start aging and you will not save the volume which you already booked before. So it's also not helping. So you have to adjust some reasonably to the new situation, to the new market condition, and you had to make it relatively precise in order to still lend, but not to make some big losses from this lending. And this balancing the positions, it's always the most difficult. And the optimizer is bringing the accurate data driven information to these the critical decisions.